Kyle! What are you doing in my house? Kyle! The history final's due tomorrow. We need to work on it right now! It's only a day. Oh my god, let's go! Okay. Wait! Kyle, what are we gonna do?
I mean, oh, let's just go ask people.
Okay, let's go. Quick, that man, get him! Social studies, answers, now! Yeah, I'm following them!
So conflicts have pretty much been around since the start of civilization. You see, in early civilizations, they didn't really have laws to govern what people could or couldn't do. So a lot of people would just kill each other over resources aimlessly because they weren't really abundant in the early days. It wasn't until people really started to settle down and grow crops in like big farms and stuff that we would have enough crops to actually supply everyone and there wouldn't be a need to kill for food anymore. Almost all early civilizations were constructed around large bodies of water, such as the Niles, Euphrates, or Tigris rivers.
Oh boy, water! Jumping forward in time, we go back to the Greeks and the Romans, and that even had conflict as well. For example, remember Alexander the Great? A very strong military leader. He was also one that sparked violence into killing, raping, and all of the bad things you can think of. This man did it. For example, remember the Persians that outnumbered him 8-1? Well, yeah, that's what happens. So, another thing to talk about here is his military conflicts. It has to do with the Persians and going out west and then going east to Asia, just conquering and conquering. A lot of times he was so violent that people just kind of let him do whatever he wants. What we're saying is there's also another reason for violence, and that reason happens to be control of power. And that Alexander the Great, just a great example, if I do say so myself. Heading over to Rome, conflict started for many reasons. One of the reasons was economic wealth. During the first battles of Carthage and Rome, one of the first battles Rome ever fought, most of it was a primary dispute of land and wealth. One of the land was Sicily.
It was Sicily.
They first fought over Sicily, which later escalated to taking over each other's land. Carthage had a much better navy, as Rome was much better on land. Rome used this advantage to fight Carthage on land, which later succeeded for Rome, taking over Carthage. And when I say take over, I mean literally go in there and burn everything to the ground. This is actually an example of when conflict ended up helping, as Rome succeeded to become very wealthy and control most of the trade routes for Rome to develop into what it was, into one of the world's superpowers at the time. So as you may or may not already know, the Mongols wanted to create their own dynasty by how? Taking over all of China, which they were really well at succeeding as, almost taking over all of China due to their sheer force but advanced military tactics as well. One prime and probably the most important example was the Mongols' horses that we talked about earlier that I will expand upon. The Mongols' horses were much more athletic and much more endurable than the other horses in China. How? Because Mongols used horses for everything. China's all grassland, so it's very suitable for horses. And anyway, they would always ride the horses around because the Mongols didn't have one exact place to live. So like I said, the Mongols don't have any home. They just keep on moving and then setting up fortifications whenever they'd see an enemy, and whenever they had to move out, they'd just simply pack up and move out. And the Mongols were really good at doing this, and in so the horses were extremely athletic and trained because their horses are always moving around. They use this to advantage by, for example, taking over other areas. Say there's a big wall, they'll trigger the people to open the big wall up, and then they'll chase the Mongols. Keep in mind the gate is still open at this time. They'll chase the Mongols for it could be hours, it could be days. Mongols will then turn around and beat them back to the base because other Chinamen's horses will be extremely exhausted by them. Not the Mongols' horses though. Go in there, slaughter everyone in there, because the gates are still open, and voila. And guess what? No one could talk about it because everyone was dead. The Mongols used a lot of tactics like these. These are just ones I can think of off my head right now to conquer all of China. And there's not, I mean, there's a lot of things that came to them, like controlling the Silk Road trade and everything. But the main reason they did this was because they want power, and that's a big thing that triggers conflict. Power. That's something almost every fight will go over. Of course, there may be other reasons like religions or economics, but for the main reason, it's mostly power, which we can talk about the Mongols right here.
Hi, please help me find the shapes.
Christianity was the main religion in Europe, and therefore Europe was very into Christianity. Therefore, this sparked something called the Crusades. This was pretty much the main conflict going on in the Dark Ages of Europe, where Europe was trying to spread their religions between Middle Eastern people, either peacefully or by force, depending on their answer. It's no surprise that the Europeans were really big into their Christianic beliefs. For example, the church and how much power it's gained throughout Europe, and how pretty much everyone was motivated to do good just because of their religion in Europe. Of course, we talked about some people obviously don't follow their beliefs as truthfully as they do, but many people were very religious to the Christianic beliefs in Europe. Therefore, when the Crusades sparked and they were trying to convert other people, mainly the Muslims in the Holy Land, some would say yes to avoid conflict, but many people would say no, and this caused pretty much the main conflicts in European history as the battle between the Islamics and the Europeans. In conclusion, all these events that happened in Europe, there wasn't much to be gained out of this other than maybe spreading small amounts of Christianity throughout the Middle Eastern territories. Of course, throughout much part of Europe, they did succeed between converting many Europeans to Christianic religions, but the difference between this was because they morphed many of the religions into Christianity, so they weren't really taking away the religion. For the Islamic people, however, they were very passionate about the religion and didn't want anything changed where all the conflict came along. So basically, in conclusion, with the Europeans and the Middle Easterns, especially the Middle Easterns in the Holy Land, there wasn't much gain, maybe spreading maybe a little bit of Christianity into some of the Middle Eastern territories. But overall, it didn't accomplish much. And don't you think it's a little ironic that religions of peace are shedding blood over each other? If you can take one thing from this video, you gotta see that there's common threads in conflict.
Lust for power, economic wealth, and different belief systems.
So next time you're in world history, you might notice a trend, and that's because we're here for you.
Hey yo, history final.